Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 41, for Newest England. You'd be surprised how often things such as that happen, Philip remarks after they report in just how oddly easy things were. Get a good-looking background and show even a slight amount of competence around some despot, and they'll think they've stumbled on a diamond in the rough. Many of these people are very much convinced they're heaven-blessed or however they wish to explain things, that they're destined for greater things and therefore the tools and people they need will come to them. If you look like a lucky find and don't have immediately visible errors in your background, they'll drag you kicking and screaming into their organization. So we're on easy street? Dis asks. Not quite yet. You have her interest in some investment from her. But it will take some time before you have her trust. And until you have that, you need to be very, very cautious. Play along for now, and so long as you play nice and proper with her, she'll convince herself in short order you are who you say you are. However, be very, very careful, because the sign that you're in her trust and the sign that she's figured you out and is preparing for disposal look quite similar to each other, and making a mistake like that is painful, Philip cautions them. Still, if you two want to work your way into her good graces, I suggest you take advantage of Blythe's bounty, track the hunters, and use what I taught you about profiling. Give her reports on these heavily armed strangers, and should you find a few to her liking, suggest recruitment. It will be unlikely to work as many bounty hunters are fiercely independent. However, it will show initiative and loyalty to her without actually helping the woman in any appreciable degree. There's something else, sir, Helen says, and Philip makes an inquisitive noise that's easily picked up over the receiver of the audio-only call. Yes? I've been looking into the history of all four Vatras, and what I've found is odd. How so? Well, for starters, each of them is a military officer from the Empire of Gavali. They were each noted for incredible benevolence compared to the other war ladies, and in that light their rebellion against the Empire makes perfect sense. However, what happened to them? Philip asks her question for her. Yes, sir. Something must have happened, but I can find nothing that turned Blythe from a mother to her soldiers into a tyrant, or the defender of men and children that was Shun into a raging pervert. Brahmastra used to be honor incarnate before her bloodlust overwhelmed her, and Milena was the mistress of logistics who could feed cities on a half-loaf of stale bread and a cup of water. But now she drowns in paranoia and a sheer contempt for anything not reptilian. It's the tragedy of revolution. In the end, it merely means to go in a circle. If the advisors, trusted asides, and other close people that would change them weren't the ones who were replaced by corruption and madness, it would have been the Vatras themselves. It's the sad state of such things. In victory, very few people know how to properly stop. So they keep going, keep pushing, keep fighting long after the last true enemy has fallen, leading to them fighting potential enemies, then surrendered enemies, then innocent bystanders, and finally their own people. Victory has destroyed more revolutions and rebellions than anything else. It's so very, very easy to become the thing you fight against, Philip states. And what's going to stop you from becoming a Vatras? I'm going to divest myself of the ability to become one. While I have little doubt in my own ability to resist corruption, there is the issue of any that may follow me or ride my coattails to power. Not to mention, no one is immune to moments of weakness, even the supposed gods known as primals. Really? You know there are some Nagasha that would take deep and personal offense at that. I'm near directly quoting the Earthani Primal I've had the pleasure of speaking to before and after his ascension. Right, I forgot you've literally spoken with gods. Dis notes. Although I'm not sure the Earthani Primal counts, he can remember being mortal. And with sufficient effort, the other primals are quite mortal as well, Philip says. There's the casually terrifying teacher again. Dis notes with mild awe in his voice. Yes, well, the more collateral you're willing to accept, the more you can kill and destroy. But we're off topic. Do you wish to return to advice on how to handle your new situation with Vatras Milena, or with the nature of rebellion, revolution, and how easily such things get corrupted? Philip asks. Oh, a final anecdote about the latter topic, please, Helen says in an impertinent voice. Very well then, the practice of the revolutionary becoming as bad or worse than the tyrant is so common that the English word for deriving pleasure from cruelty is sadism, so-called due to Donatien Alphonse François de Sade, a political activist, libertarian, and writer, whose writings were so depraved and cruel he spent much of his time inside and out of numerous insane asylums, and his behavior so disgusting that even the people whom saved his life due to their hatred of the previous regime found themselves unable to stomach him. Wouldn't that just show that a revolutionary still has standards? Dis asks. In some manners, but it's also a warning at the type of person that tries to find their way among revolutionaries, and the smarter ones are subtle about it, corrupting rather than disgusting the people they latch onto like parasites, Philip says. Donatien failed. He was too open with his perversions. But many others did not, and the French Revolution became as twisted as it was glorious as criminals and psychopaths seized power from righteous rebels. Does this mean it's possible to convert the Vatras back into being for the people? Dis continues. Yes. However, the process would be long, and to be frank, we're on the edge of a hostile power. We need to remove these women from positions of authority. Killing them is not necessary, but it's quite clear they're susceptible to the corrupting influences that power draws to itself. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, Helen says sadly. Not quite. It's that the corrupt and corruptible crave power. They chase it with a fervor that most religions can hardly match, Philip says. However, they're grasping and make themselves invaluable to the people necessary in many organizations, bringing the rot to the very heart of an organization. And tearing out the rot will likely tear everything down with it. It's easier and often less painful to simply tear the organization down from the beginning and make something new, Philip says. Now, is there anything else you'd like to know? Not particularly, but if you could lure a hunter or two through Milena's territory for us, that would be appreciated. And you think I can simply conjure a bounty hunter mere hours after a price on my head was posted? Philip asks in an amused tone. No one answers him, and he chuckles. You would be correct. Look for a Yaya on 4th and Main. How the hell does he do that? Dis asks, looking at Helen. In this case, a fast car in good form while running. Excuse me, Philip says. Motherfucker, he's actually doing it, Helen says, tossing the coin at Dis, who takes it with a grin she thankfully can't see. How did he get one so fast? Helen demands. She must have been on the planet when the bounty went up. Dis notes as Philip flies his car just ahead of the Yaoya huntress, who keeps thinking she has a beat on him, but he's a dodgy prick even when sitting still, so she cannot hit him at all. Right, well she's firing recklessly, so I'm going to stop this stupidity before it gets someone hurt. You with me? Dis asked. In. Helen agrees, and they both grab at the axiom. Dis' clothing disappears, and Helen suddenly looks like Philip. They teleport to get ahead of the chase and quickly lay an ambush. A quick text to Philip about the plan with a smile emoji given in response, and it's all a go. A 90-degree turn that has an engine suddenly start screaming, and the inertia showing every speck of dust and dirt on the inside of the car that was missed switches things around. The air car is now being driven sideways. The hunting Yaoya follows on her much more agile air bike and follows him through the narrow alleyway. Then as the chase continues, another car is suddenly in the chase, and the Yaoya glances back before looking again as she sees her target behind her. She looks forward again, and he's gone in a swirl of axiom power. She slams the brakes as she swerves to the side to allow him to pass and become the chaser again. And the moment she does, a blast of electrical energy hits her in the side, and she falls into the arms of an invisible man. Twitching. All right, let's write up a report and see what kind of results we get out of this. Dis notes as his clothing, but not him, fades into view. Now you're just showing off. Helen accuses him as both of them receive a text from Philip. Have fun. I must admit, I'm a little torn, Milena states over the call. On one hand, your initiative is exceptional. On the other, you have technically disobeyed the letter of my orders while obeying the unspoken spirit. Are we in trouble? Dis asks. That has yet to be seen, Milena notes. Luring out and then capturing a reckless bounty hunter is an interesting course of actions. I would like to hear from your own mouths why you thought this was the best course of action. We needed to see whether or not the hunter actually cared about collateral damage when we spotted her. Helen lies. Oh? It's the biggest concern, isn't it? Not so much the target as what's around it. Whoever this Tret is, Dis begins. The target has apparently undergone a genetic modification to become human, Milena corrects Dis. Okay. This Tret-born human, whoever he is, he apparently has the sheer audacity to mess with Vatras, which means he can show up in any city. So, I wanted to know if she would just open fire and damn the consequences if she saw her target. So I had her take a shape and the answer was yes. The hunter is too dangerous to allow in the city because she's going to break something or someone in her manic pursuit. I see, Milena states. I'm getting a better idea of the both of you. Still, you have served me well. Head to this location. There will be a reward for you. Keep up the interesting work. Then the call is ended and they both start engaging in small talk to fill the air as they leave the area. Once they're a good ways away, Helen adjusts her illusion to hide the fact she's talking still. So, good or bad? Helen asks. Could go either way. I think we're coming across as overly eager, but still effective. Oh God, we're going to be slotted into idiot minion roles, aren't we? Dis asks. We're not in a cartoon, Dis. If we were, we're not. I'm just saying. I'm putting an end to this conversation. No, you're not. You can't move without giving it away. We're having a private conversations, and Milena will want to know why you hit me if I randomly get smacked upside the head. I'm not going to just hit you. I'm going to get even later. Kinky. Not like that, Helen says, and Dis chuckles under his breath. So what do you think the next move is? Well, we're clearly on Milena duty, so we get into position where we can learn more about her people and see who can be taken out in some way. Or something. Philip is really planning on getting things to go crazy, so why is infiltration still so on his mind, Ma? Helen asks. I don't know, but he's doing something. Thank you for the information, citizen. This will be of great use to our Vatras, the yellow-clad woman states, and Philip nods beneath his new wig and false jaw extension. I just want to make sure that whatever's going on ends as quickly as possible. Scrapping isn't going to be safe until things calm down, Philip says, and the soldier nods. Of course, you do know that it's easily possible for you to get a much more lucrative employment with your true Vatras, Lady Shun, do you not? I'd rather not. Thank you. I don't do well with competition and a whole army of other guys. Competition, 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 Philip says in a timid tone, and the woman nods. Of course, Vatras Shun will be quite upset with both Brahmastra and Milena, but such is the way of things. Move along now. We will contact you later for your reward. Thank you, ma'am, now. No, it's nowhere near safe for you to try and scavenge something off the battlefield. Philip sighs. Yes, ma'am. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 42. For newest England, secure in her newest hires, eager, prone to trouble, but easily bought. Milena moves on to the next important bit of work. These two new hires will be at least some counter to the bounty hunters that Blythe has called forward. For now, a bit of spot welding to keep the hull integrity intact, at least until things can be properly repaired, which means that she needs to go back to an older leak that has now become much more of an issue. Shun is outright declaring war to try and retrieve her lost pet. She's currently blaming Brahmastra, but Milena has the pet in question. A pet sent by either Blythe or Brahmastra, an attempt to frame her that seems to be backfiring. For now. Just for now. She has no delusions that it's going to stay that way. The blood of her former fellows burns too hot and will drive them to inane and insane courses of action. Like all other hot-blooded races, the images of traitors, cowards, and thieves who had done everything they could to destroy what she was trying to build flashed through her mind. Her tail lashes to the side and slams the nearby wall. The vast, vast, vast majority of them being a hot-blooded species, and the only time she'd found a cold-blooded species working against her and her own, it had been against their wishes, or they had been conveyed or corrupted by a hot-blooded race. Her grandmother's old sayings had come to her, and it had ensured that things had straightened out. She understood logically that things were not so simple, but the issues that faced her were so complicated she needed a few easy answers to focus on the real problems. Problems like trying to rebuild a literally blasted economy, keep the people from rebelling, ward of the empire and all its insipid, self-congratulating buffoons, to say nothing of trying to figure out what her former sisters in arms might be up to. Everything had fallen apart so quickly. Blythe at least had some idea towards order, but preferred it at the muzzle of a coil gun. Brahmastra had grown long addicted to bloodshed and madness, and the less said about Shun's addictions, the better. The woman's indulgence had disgusted Malena so thoroughly that even the thought of having one of the depraved woman's toys in her base. But what in the actual hells was she supposed to do? One of the others had sent Shun's toy to her as if it were a gift, and there is no simple answer. Couple that with the madness that had happened shortly after with the stations, and she had nearly forgotten the man entirely. "Open the cell!" She commands the guards, and at the press of a button, a reinforced door slides into the floor, and the target begins to stir. A few moments of thrashing against his blankets, and Jericho looks up before grabbing his cap of office and cramming it back down. He scrambles to stand up as tall as he can and glare at her imperiously, trying to salvage some dignity. "Lady Shun will attack the wrong target entirely. She's currently tangled up in Brahmastra's forces," she says shortly, and he glares at her. "But this is neither here nor there. I finally have some time for a self-congratulating hot-blood fool like you. So I have a very simple question. And I have a simple answer," he states and offers up a rude hand gesture. "Yes, the general reaction of you hot-bloods," she dismisses. "Now, who sent you to me?" "Pardon? Who sent you to me?" she says slowly, as if speaking to a particularly slow and dim child. "How do you not know who your agents are, Almo?" "Do you think I'm an idiot?" Jericho demands. "And who do you think is working for me?" Malena starts leading the fool through things. "That cloaking of yours!" He snarls and she raises an eye ridge. She has very few cloaken in her employ. In fact, her recent hires had in fact doubled their number. Unless several women in her employ were keeping their private lives private to a ludicrous degree, also an illegal one. The species part of the employment contract was in fact not what you looked like, but what you physically were. How? What cloaken? The one that was trying to recruit that engineer. She has the access codes of the overwhelming order station, and my duty was to make sure that... Jericho begins to rant, and she holds up her hand. He wisely chooses to be silent. The station known as the Overwhelming Order vanished in a viral attack. This prompted a mass panic on the part of the station commanders and the other Vatras. We have lost all but one war station each, and the Overwhelming Order is most assuredly not destroyed, but cannot be found. But how does one hide an entire station? I have probes seeking the far sides of the uninhabitable worlds and system, and to find any unusual and new asteroids. But the question as to how the station could get into such a position is beyond me so far. "Oh, so he was subverting station staff," Jericho says in horror. I failed my Vatras. Who was subverting station staff?" Malena presses, and the look of horror on the man's face hardens into a glare. "That is restricted information," Jericho says harshly. "This person is responsible for one of the greatest disasters the Vatras as a whole have suffered during our entire occupation of Labaron. You might not serve me, but you serve a Vatras, and this wretch has hurt us all. Who did it?" "If you let me report directly to my Vatras, I will allow you to listen in." Jericho bargains, and she glares at him for a moment before smirking. "Very well, I will call her, and I will call her. I will not accept any other results." Jericho hisses, and Malena's eyes narrow. "No. Then we are at odds," Jericho states. "So you think? You've just lost your light privileges," she states as she turns around and smacks the door close button with her tail. She then nods to her guard, who turns the lights off. He will crack quickly. He has less than no leverage and will realize it soon. While interesting, rumor is just that. Rumor. "Have you been able to confirm that Mr. Dawn is still in Malena's main base?" Philip asks. "We have not, but everyone here is certain of it," Helen says. 2,000 years ago, many of my species believed the world flat. 18,000 years ago, your species believed the same. Certainty of something is not proof of a thing. Philip retorts. I think I may have a confirmation. I've spoken to a guardswoman and she's warned me of angering Vatras Milena. Apparently she's cut off the yellow prisoner's light privileges, leaving him in darkness. Dis adds, and there's a pensive sound. That does sound powerful. If you can confirm a few more eyewitnesses, it should be enough, especially with this bit of torture. Hearing about it should get Shun to abandon all pretense of not wanting open war. Brahmastra will not be able to resist the challenge, Milena won't be able to tolerate it, and Blythe will be looking the wrong way entirely. I should be able to strike from behind with a triviality of effort, Philip remarks. Anything else? No. We're very much a combination of gophers and contract help in this organization. As socially invisible as I am physically invisible, Dis says. It's a good place to be. Keep up the good work. I have some more chaos to sow. Excuse me, Philip says, and the call ends. Philip gives the device a slight twirl before pocketing it and walking back to his air bike with a happy little hum. He takes off and flies off over the city. As he goes, he pulls out a small axiom resonating gem and places it against his forehead. His features seem to shift, and his presence in the axiom alters. Now he's a Tret that looks at, he came out of their equivalent of Persia as the vehicle shifts to a dark green coloration with brighter green flames on it. There is a sudden movement as something mostly invisible leaps off a building to try and intercept him. So he uses the strange, mystic, and rarely understood device known as a brake to avoid the attempted interception. There is a thump 5 stories below, and he leans over while hovering in midair. The figure looks to be a Mara, but there's something about her in that she has a blindfold on, for no explicable reason. There is a movement behind him, but he only glances into the mirrors without moving his head to get a glance at the person. So, I take it that you saw my little transformation. You should have done that in private. The figure behind him chides. I honestly thought better of you. Well, you'll have to pardon me, madam, but I was already in another disguise when you first saw me. One that your particular type of sight sees clearly through. But as there are no Zedin in the employ of the Vatras, I dare say it was an acceptable bit of sloppiness. It is only then that he turns around and his conversational partner unveils herself. Teeth first, like a proper horror movie monster. How is the family, Madame Esma? Well, one of my younger daughters is currently groaning on the ground, even though she's axiom-hardened herself and had harder beds to sleep on, you silly girl. Pick yourself up already. I'm luring the prey into a false sense of security, the girl calls back up, and Sir Philip just scoffs. It's not working, Yzma calls down. So 50 million credits, just to talk with you. What can I say? My fans are fanatics, Philip says with a grin. What are you up to? Overthrowing a corrupt government. One of them caught wise to my sabotage, which would be hard not to as I personally took her hostage for a few moments, and has decided that she needs help, which is not unreasonable. But it will not save her, Philip says. And if I decide to take you to her? She asks, and he raises an eyebrow and smirks. Yes, you definitely taught Herbert well. Thank you, Philip says. Now we... There is a moan from below, and both of them look down at the still-prone Mara. Then they lean back up. So you arrived rather quickly, Philip notes. There are quartz wolves in the Eurythena system, not quite as large as most targets, but they're extremely cunning, plasma-resistant, are hardened to kinetics, and firing a laser at one sends it right back. She explains. Oh, nice, a hard foe to crack, but not unstoppable. Yes, despite someone making it sound as such, Yzma says, leaning over to chide her daughter again. Those monsters were cheating, the Mara calls up. Just get up here, Giselle, Yzma calls down, and there's a sigh of disappointment. Oh, none of that sass, little lady. You wanted to go on a hunt with me, and you wanted to have the first crack at the bounty. But Mom, Giselle protests. No buts, up, Yzma calls down, and the Mara girl finally peels herself off the concrete and then finds her way up in short order. So, no questions as to what I'm up to? Philip asks. No, but do understand that it will be a bit more in the case of catch and release for me and my daughter here, she says, and he considers before nodding. Fair enough. However, do understand that I'm going to be stirring up a great deal of trouble, so there's no telling what's going to happen with that bounty, Philip remarks. I look forward to it. Hopefully my little girl will learn something from you. She's so stubborn about learning from me. I'm right here, Giselle protests. And are you going to do something about it? Isma asks, and Giselle looks away, causing her gigantic and powerful mother to sigh in disappointment. Don't worry, you'll find a way. I know, it's just frustrating, Isma remarks. Right, well excuse me, I have a warmongering war lady to provoke. Ta, Philip says before gunning his engine. Best of luck, Isma calls out to him as he rockets away. You're just letting him go? Giselle asks. Of course. But 50 million! Not worth it. I do believe I could take him, but he would make it such a slog that it wouldn't be worth it. Not to mention he's likely to render any reward moot. What do you mean? The bounty is to take him alive and capable of answering questions, which means he has to be in good shape, which is much harder to do. Furthermore, he's the type that if things get troublesome for him, he'll shoot his way out. And if we disarm him first, he's a fighter, the kind of fighter where him having weapons and not having weapons is generally the difference between whether he kills something fast or slow. We bring him to Blythe, and Blythe likely dies before we can collect a reward, Isma explains. So what if we get him to work with us, Giselle asks, and Isma smiles. And that is thinking ahead, my dear. We'll make a hunt mistress out of you yet. Out of cruel space into a wider galaxy, Part 43, for newest England. For the first time since he came to Laveron, Philip is truly surprised. An unknown number is calling him. Things are getting interesting now, aren't they? Hello? He asks, his voice full of curiosity and amusement. Good. The device worked. Giselle's voice sounds out, and his eyebrows climb up. I'd like to ask your help with something. If you're asking me to turn myself in besides you, then I will do so for a fair share of the bounty, Philip says, and the girl on the other end cheers. I will have to hold off a bit on it, though. I need to cause a bit more of a mess. Okay, would tomorrow at 3 suit you? It would, although I must say, little lady, the way this being set up sounds more like you're setting me up on a date. Incidentally, and totally unrelated, is your mother available? Philip teases, and the sputtering of the young woman is drowned out by the eavesdropping Isma's belly laugh. Philip smirks as he hears the communicator being taken from Giselle and the amused giggle of her Dzedin mother pour through. Sir Philip, you have to play nice with little girls, Isma chides him. I am playing nice, he protests with a laugh. Then I shudder to think about you playing naughty. No, you fantasize about my playing naughty. It's my playing nasty that makes you shudder. Philip corrects her. Quit while you're ahead, or I'll take you up on your offer. Isma says, and he snorts. Threats of a good time, madam? Mutually, Isma agrees. Oh my goddess, stop, please, Giselle begs. Very well then, for the sake of the children, I will restrain my urge to have more, Isma teases. For now. No, Giselle protests, and Philip can easily imagine her covering her ears. So I take it she's not eager to be a big sister? She is a big sister, Isma points out, and Philip covers the receiver to have a laugh to himself for a moment. Lucky her, Philip says with his smile clearly audio in his voice. Anyhow, 3 o'clock tomorrow. Where will we be meeting? We'll find you. Well, if you want me to have that kind of fun, who am I to say no? Be there with bells on, he says. You or me? Isma asks in amusement. Yes, Philip replies. Toodles. He ends the call and tucks the communicator away. He then turns to his little project and finishes writing a note on it, changing the time for later today rather than tomorrow. Less time to get things ready, but so much happening at once means so much gets done at once. Speaking of getting a lot done, he starts speed loading and firing the mortar. A nice little final touch to force people into open war rather than endless saber rattling and posturing. There just weren't enough fatalities for Shun's and Brahmastra's pissing match for him. And I'm saying that I want nothing to do with your little... Brahmastra snarls at Shun. Both Vatras were out in their armor, and things had stopped just barely short of full-on violence. Barely. Mostly because no one was sure who would win, and both commanders being on the field meant it would be a mutual decapitation strike if they did. Of course, that's exactly when a barrage of explosives slams into Shun's mobile armor line. The battle walkers are under-armored, and their defense of incredible speed and agility means sweet fuck all when they're being shelled by complete surprise. Already itchy trigger fingers go off, leading to rail shot, plasma lances and pulsed laser barrages lighting up the air. It flows so thick and strong, it turns a dreary and overcast day so bright that unprotected species would get sunburn from mere proximity to the fight. Like all actual fights that aren't sieges, it's over in seconds, and the remains of both sides retreat. A rocket shoots out of the side, and one of Shun's armors, it's shredded in the side as they try and get some distance. Seeing opportunity, Brahmastra jolts forward and then to the side to get closer to the source of that rocket. Whatever it was, it's attacked Shun twice. Sure, it kicked off the fight, but someone eager to fight and able to deal mass death? Yes, please. She rockets around the building, and when she half slides, half glides, as the armor does to see into the alleyway the rocket came out of. She comes sensor to barrel with an already loaded rocket launcher held by a dour skinned and sharp-eyed man who looks ready to send her straight to her ancestors. She almost understands Shun's man obsession in that moment. She turns on the outer speaker. Who are you? I am Abraham Zataros, mercenary. Weird name for a Tret, but there's weirder in her own forces. He probably has another species for a mother. It's probably influencing that weird accent where he seems to be almost biting on the more sibilant sounds. And was that little display your resume? She asks. And my declining of an offer from Shun. Abraham replies, I have left the hive of my mother to seek the one thing she and her sisters could never give. And that was strength. Strength to make or break as I see fit. Abraham states, and Brahmastra smiles to herself. She was definitely liking this. A kindred soul, so sick of the clutching, grasping, and smothering regulations and concerns of those too weak to make things happen themselves, that they kick off to make things their own way. Why is the rocket still pointed at me? She asks. If you refuse, then you become mine resume to Blythe. Failing that, you and her become mine to Melina. Surely your heads will make her see past my hot blood. He explains, and she laughs at the sheer audacity. She literally has 13 tons of high-grade armor on him. She can break the sound barrier in seconds and snipe through a city block casually with her cannons. But he still has the advantage on her. An armor-piercing rocket at point-blank range will injure him and kill her. Does she have the reflexes to accelerate her armor fast enough to dodge? Maybe, but it wasn't certain. Well then, mercenary, consider yourself hired, Brahmastra states. Now lower the rocket launcher. After a moment, he does so. She smiles to herself and gestures for him to follow. You've already impressed me, little man. Your disdain for Shun is well-reasoned. If she has her way, every man alive would be little more than a pet for pleasure. Come with me. I'm going to see just how good of a mercenary you are. Brahmastra did not normally consider herself impressed by people. There was a vicious edge that most soldiers lacked, an unwillingness to truly commit, a sort of detachment from what they were doing that made even a brutal fight or skirmish seem routine. There was none of that in this man. An aura of barely suppressed rage and frustration in his axiom presence that was just barely visible in little twitches and little touches of extra brutality as he destroyed a training dummy with something akin to a personal vendetta, a deep well of anger just waiting for direction, only needing a little money to be pointed the right way. Perfect. Very good. You've got passion, you have skill. She smiles. Something that is damn intimidating on a Canador. Now, it's time to talk about what we're going to do. Get yourself something to eat, and by the time you're done, I'll have a mission for you. That said, she slinks off, and the most physically dangerous of the Vatras has given him her blessing. Philip swallows the smile. His disguise won't last too long. Not under a serious probe. But the galaxy is so massive that his failure to provide a homeworld or home hive, as he had hinted at having Charbis ancestry, won't bring up much of a comment. Couple that with just how long an actual search would take, and he has a while yet to get things done. Cafeteria has him drinking a nutrient shake that is both a watered-down and dehydrated smoothie. Calling it a disappointment would be more appropriate. 2 hangars he's not allowed in, numerous munition stores and the holding cells, all where it's supposed to be from the plans he's read, which means that Mechie's package should be nearby. The vents in the building are secured by magnets and have many breaks in them, which are filled with reinforced fans. Logically, it's impossible to get anyone in normally. The vents, even when they're straightways, are full of dust and grime and too small for even the shortest race to comfortably squeeze through, which is why a tiny drone with a micro beacon was sent instead. As he pulls off the grate, he plucks off the drone and replaces the metal. Then as he walks away, he gives the tip of the beacon a slight twist and activates it. And suddenly his arms are full of supplies and munitions. He then walks in front of a camera, looks directly into it, and pulls off the small jewel to reveal his real face as he blatantly, openly, and with a very self-assured smirk, pulls out a large plasma rifle from his duffel bag of death. The alarms are screaming before he even slings it across his shoulders. Inattentive security is useful. Paranoid security is fun. How is the concrete on fire? Learning that Ibrahim was a spy was unpleasant. She had been so fooled, but learning he was a spy that could set concrete on fire and leave deadly carcinogens behind as he did so was far, far worse. Brahmastra was looking over the ruined remnants of an entire armored division, melded down into abstract statues of loss and failure by the rampage of the spy. A spy that was now somewhat identified as the same being that had hit Blythe. The woman even had a bounty on the prick. 50 million to be brought in alive. He had opened fire on Shun, betrayed her, and Blythe wanted him. Was he sent by Milena? Wait. Look up the report on Milena's roster. Ma'am, the base. Now, Brahmastra states. Yes, ma'am. Now, I need to know, is there or is there not a new Cloaken in Milena's forces? 2, ma'am. 2 new Cloaken have been hired in the past 24 hours. Contract work only, but they've apparently proven themselves. It's her. She's trying to get us to fight each other and bump each other off, Brahmastra realizes. Finish putting the base out and call up all my forces. We're marching on that blue-clad bitch today. When you told me you'd be done with her quick, you weren't kidding. Michi notes as he just stares at the video feed. Brahmastra is whipping herself and her fellows into a borderline frenzy as she gathers what's left of her forces of a massive attack on Milena. All 4 of them have some very easy buttons to press. The only matter is pushing them all at the right time, and Brahmastra was nice and easy in that she could be set off at any time. So do you think they'll take each other out tonight? No, but they will weaken each other, drive one another paranoid, and further erode whatever atrophied bonds of trust they have remaining. Then when they hear the news that the bounty on Mai is cashed in, and they start putting things together, they're going to go for Blythe to get some answers. They will directly get some answers, leaving them vulnerable. You really think all 4 of them are going to be in the same place at the same time? Mechi presses. No, but they're going to all have a significant part of their forces there. I get out and the area gets bombarded by our combat walkers. Even if we don't get Blythe at that point, we have enough confusion, consternation, and all the stations aiming towards one area. Allowing us to attack, we rise up the overwhelming order as everything gets confused and take our first shot. After that, we retreat the station behind the planet itself. While the other stations try to aim, we hit their communications again. Finally, we begin hunting down the other 3 Vitras. If Blythe is out of commission, then her station will likely have chain of command issues, meaning we only have to worry about 2 after that shot, provided you shoot something other than Blythe's. And since they won't be speaking to each other to coordinate, we can possibly get a 2nd or 3rd shot off. I won't be counting on that, though. I will be counting on the sudden realization that a good chunk of their armies just came under artillery fire to distract the Vatras. We then move the artillery, getting them out of the area and using as many cloaking drones as possible to hide them, or better yet, use the uncloaked walkers to bait the faster models the Vatras use into traps. And with a good chunk of their forces dead, and at least one of the Vatras dead, if not without a war station, the other 3 will try to flee or retaliate. They try to hit the station and our artillery can bombard from below. They try to get a beat on our artillery and the station can take a pot shot. They will not be working together. They will make mistakes, and with communications down, confusion high and heady. They're definitely going to run right into the traps my students set before we stole the station, Philip explains, and Mechi stares at him. Okay, very cool. But what happens when shit hits the fan? We hit back. No plan survives the enemy because no enemy wants to go with your plan. So we stack the deck as much as we can and play the best hand we can, Philip says, and the gob sighs. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some soldiers to speak with. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 44, for Newest England. So that's a shift in the plan, Shelley notes after listening to Philip's explanation, and the man nods. She, Martha, and Gweno were going over a large map of a large area with proposed battle planes. The likely routes the Vatras will take to besiege the baited base visible. It wasn't complicated so far, just an indication where Blythe's base, patrols, and emplacements were, and the shortest path from each Vatras base towards it. There was an assumption that each engagement would get a small amount of blood from each other. The emplacements would be disgustingly outnumbered, but the presence of all the Vatras forces in one area would give them pause, which is when the barrage would begin. Each of the Vatras forces were highlighted as their preferred colors: bright red for Blythe, yellow for Shun, blue for Milena, and green for Brahmastra. Their own prospective forces were in pale purple, and the landscape was glowing white to provide contrast to all of it. Unfortunately, things didn't happen perfectly. Still, I have the Vatras in open war between Brahmastra and Shun, and both are pointed at Milena before I lure them to Blythe. With everyone eager to slaughter and looking the wrong way, it should be a day at the firing range for you girls, Philip explains before pulling out a data chit out of his pocket. Especially as I'm going to be using this, which is an upgrade to the worm program that I used to kill the communications while I stole the overwhelming order station. It won't take them as long to crack it this time, as it uses a lot of the same programming code as the first program. But it will be time to give off a salvo, perhaps 2, before repositioning. Then you can set a trap and launch another to bait the remaining forces of the enemy into an ambush. If they're packed in tightly enough, we could take out nearly half of their forces in a single barrage, Shelley notes. They'll scatter hard after that, even without communications. But they'll struggle to find us if we don't use that second barrage. So no, one barrage, then relocate to a trap position filled with anti-air and anti-armor emplacements. Very good. I'm glad that you're thinking this through, Philip compliments. I will trust your advice on the competence of local forces. What's the mission goal? Surely not total destruction. Of course not. Total eradication is impractical and, to be frank, insane in almost any circumstance. In these ones, we have to make the armies of the 4 Vatras unable or unwilling to resist us any longer. Either will do, but as wartime situations are fluid at best, which one is easier to accomplish will vary from situation to situation. Really? Making someone unwilling to resist sounds easier. It certainly sounds easier, but I find in practical experience that a properly trained opponent is only truly unwilling to resist when they fully understand they're unable to resist, Philip says, and Shelley sighs. Yes, that's not exactly inaccurate, she admits. It had taken her a very long time to stop resisting the Vatras, and had taken a lot more punishment than she actually needed to. She hadn't really thought it through at the time. Fighting was just natural. She has to assume that the other soldiers are going to be like she was, except aimed at their Vatras instead of for the world itself. Maybe it could be useful, Shelley considers as a strategy begins percolating in her mind. She taps a few commands and the white clusters. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that we might be able to buy ourselves some time if we spread out our forces. Make our barrage seem like it's actually coming from their own forces, calling in close-range artillery strikes. Shelley considers as she fiddles with the controls in the large purple cluster hidden behind a cluster of large rocky and tree-covered hills, breaks into 4 groups, and each one signifies attacking a force opposite of itself and pointedly not attacking the nearest force. Following the other forces through the valleys that lead into the area surrounding the hill Blythe's base is built into. A bluff? With artillery? Dear goodness, girl, Philip says in an admiring tone. He smiles widely at the suggestion. An excellent idea. We will add to the confusion, and while there will be some less total saturation, it will buy us more time to gather the forces together and make a single concentrated shot against one of the stations. We'll wait till after the stations have been hit by the overwhelming order, hit the next one and then scatter to a fortified location. Here, we'll have to convert a few air cars to be more or less mobile turrets, automated preferably so we can just park them where they're needed to start filling the air with plasma and lasers to keep their armored forces off our combat walkers, Shelley remarks. They'll go low after that. The rocky terrain and trees will mean that they'll have slowed down far away from their max speed or risk shattering against the ground, which means ground forces with anti-armor munitions will be in position to rip them apart, provided we can find places they can more or less shoot their enemies in the back. You're planning on luring them all there at 3 tomorrow, Matha muses. That means we'll have to get started damn early in the morning to be properly emplaced for all this madness. This is still bad odds. We've reactivated as many of the old guard as we can, but we still have only 2/3 the force of any one Vatras. Yes, but we not only have the pleasure of the first blow in choosing the battleground, but we will also have communication, a plan, and our enemy is not unified. While we will not rely on it, we can cause disgusting amounts of damage to them, and they're liable to blame each other instead of us. That tilts the odds into favoring us instead of them, Gweno adds in. So I take it things look good? Philip asked. Don't be so smug. You promised us a guaranteed victory and us just taking control after everything was over. Instead, we have to put work in, Shelley chides him. That was the plan, but no enemy in their right mind will follow a plan that includes their destruction. Unless you're fighting someone suicidal, but that's just going off on an odd tangent, Philip replies. Now the focus is making sure we do this as quickly as possible. As bad as the Vatras are, they're still more or less the better option to the Empire. So we need to end them quickly and then present as strong a force to the Empire to keep them off us. Do you know what the Empire is up to? Shelley asks. I have some contacts, secretaries of secretaries sort of routine, assistant quartermasters, and the men and women in logistics and the like can tell you what entire nations are doing if you understand how to read the data, Philip explains. And the Empire of Gavali is sensing weakness. They're moving scouting forces to the system to get a better look at things. Once the main battle is over, I will have a shot for the station to take. One that is unlikely to hit as even a blind child can dodge at that range. But taking the shot will show the Empire that there's still teeth in the system, making them cautious. So if we don't pull this off, we go from bad to worse. And if we do, we go from bad to better, and growing better still. Philip counters and he faces Shelley's glare with a smirk. Slow rot and inevitable doom, or a bit of a pinch as we cut it out and burn it away. Is it really a choice? Are you comparing a civil war to a primitive medical procedure? Yes. I could make a compare to leeches as well if you like. Leeches? A very primitive medical treatment, Philip remarks. Now then, we need to account for as much as possible on your end, because this part of things needs to go off perfectly, as it's equally a distraction to the simultaneous operation of overwhelming order, rising from Lake Orthanaga to shoot down the other stations, as the war we're waging in the heavens will be a distraction for this ground battle. We can hammer this out a little more. Coordination is going to be difficult. Not particularly. It all begins at 3. I just need a few more things in place. Most importantly, a pair of allies, Philip says. Whom? The women who are going to be taking me into Blythe. Or rather, I want the mother on our side. The daughter goes with her. Answer the question, you slippery bastard. Grand Huntsmistress and Matriarch Yzma. She's on planet and paid me a little visit. Her daughter wants the bounty on my head, and I'm willing to let them claim it, but under specific conditions. And those conditions are? Philip waits patiently for Yzma's laughter to stop on the other side of the call. It was a good sign. If the woman was amused, it meant she was more likely to agree. He puts the communicator on speaker and sets it to the side as he brings out a small novel. He needs to decompress a little before his next big day, and as much fun as it would be to explore Yzma in every way imaginable, she would likely tire him out as much as he could tire her out. Either way, it would be a poor idea. After he gets a few pages done, Yzma calms down enough to ask if he's still there. I am. And how are you, madam? Have you recovered? He asks, and there's a huff of amusement. So you want me and my daughter to turn you in, and you'll come with us willingly? And then your share of the bounty is payment for us to turn on our new employer the moment the money is ours and help you decapitate Blythe's organization and the woman herself before escaping with you, because military bombardment is coming in. Yzma summarizes, and Philip lets out a small chuckle. That's about the summation of it. You're mad. I'd rather think I have a rather even temperament, Philip replies smugly, but if you're lacking in courage. Oh, don't try to bait me, young man. You may be old and well-vetted by human standards, but by mine you still need some seasoning. Yzma replies, so that's no to a celebratory date? Yes, that's a no. Get another century of this under your belt and I'll come for you instead, Yzma promises him, and he chuckles himself. Well then, I'll see you soon enough either way. Oh, I don't doubt it. After all, you're quite the father figure if your work with little Herbert was any indication. Mom, please stop! Giselle finally makes herself known in the conversation in the most amusing way possible. Now, dear, there's nothing wrong with me having another child the natural way. As much fun as sperm roulette is knowing that a human girl or Zedin boy is up next is more than a little. Yzma trails off as Giselle starts singing loudly in a language that Philip can only vaguely decipher. Ah, children, a delight in almost every way, Philip says fondly. Oh, I know. It's so cute to see her so uncomfortable when she thinks I don't know about the files labeled anatomical study. Yzma coos, and the sound of Giselle outright choking in response brings a chuckle from Philip. I see. Still you're on board? Oh my goodness, yes. It would take quite a bit for me to miss this kind of fun. Do I have to? Giselle asks. No, but you won't get any cut of the reward money, any kind of good story out of this and my disappointment. Yzma answers. Dear goodness, woman, play nice with her. Philip chides her. What? It's perfectly fair to cut her off from a share of the bounty if she doesn't want to take part. I was talking about the disappointment. Some have fought entire wars to avoid such a thing from a beloved parent. It would be even more disappointing if my dear children dictated their lives based around my every opinion and not their own desires and aspirations. Yzma notes. Dear God, woman, are you trying to force your children into a no-win scenario? Philip asks. It's called tough love. You need to know how to say no even to people you respect after all, Yzma says. After all, if the little skittering darlings are ever going to leave the nest, they need to stand up to things scarier than Mama out there. Hey, it would be quite the search for something in this galaxy that's more frightening than you are, madam. Philip notes. Rude. You're armor-plated with numerous sharp ends, a distinct lack of eyes, stabbing tail, night black appearance, and sheer mobility and size makes you quite the force to be reckoned with. And that's before considering the sheer skill and experience you have. I already told you that you're too young for me, Yzma chides him, and you should know by now that I like challenges. Indeed. See you at 3? 2, there's travel time to consider. Of course, silly me. Yes, silly you, ta. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 45, for Newest England. Ah, Giselle! I was worried you'd miss out in the fun, young lady. I'm as old as you are. Really? Well, that would make your mother officially a cougar by Earth standards. Bro! Philip teases, making a paw-like gesture towards Yzma, and the massive and massively powerful Zedin bursts out in helpless laughter. I'm not on the hunt, you little bugger, Yzma says around her deluge of helpless giggles, and Giselle's face is buried in her hands. Oh, you do understand human slang? Capital, Philip says, and Giselle shakes her head. No, but I can recognize flirting when I see it. You're awful. She's old enough to have founded your nation, Giselle protests and brings about renewed laughter from her mother. Then Giselle interrupts Philip as he tries to respond. Don't! Not another word of flirting. I will warn Blythe of your plan if you keep doing it. Spoil sport. Besides, it's not really flirting unless the prize can be won. Otherwise, it's just good, clean entertainment. Philip protests. Not to me, it's not, Giselle snaps back and Philip sighs. You need to calm down, young lady. There's few things more foolish than going into a dangerous situation while panicking. Philip chides her, and she scoffs at him. He's right, you know. A calm mind can make better decisions. If you panic, you're prone to mistakes. Yzma agrees. So what are the full details? What level of sheer madness are we going to do? Well, the easy way out requires you both to have these. They will pull you back to a safe place, a safe house to be specific, Philip says, holding out a pair of Kutha devices. These clip onto a belt or band or lapel, and you just turn them on and you'll land on a crash pad that's nice and soft. I suggest you get off it quickly because if things are bad enough for one of us to need this, it likely means that another one of us is about to use it. And between the three of us, with all the elbows and feet and such, it would be unpleasant for us to land on each other. Usually for something like that to be entertaining, it has to be at least somewhat guided. We're really doing this, betraying a contract and then running away with a criminal? Giselle says in a stunned tone. No, you're going through everything properly. You're going to legally hand me over to Blythe and inform the system that I've been handed over nice and cleanly. It's just that I've warned you about potential danger that comes after and in exchange for my cooperation in this. You're not going to tell Blythe about the other things I've done, and I'm so fond of you I've given you a way to escape, Philip says, and it's a good deal. We're being hired to bring him to Blythe. The contract says nothing about warning her about the danger of her well-known, clearly upset and openly violent rivals. She knows about them, Yzma says. It still feels like cheating. Unfortunately, that's the way many things go. Fighting a war honestly or taking down a warlord honorably just leads to more death and devastation. The Vatras were going to slowly grind down this world until the Empire of Gavali stomps down on it again. You've been fitted through their borders. What was it like? Corrupt, wasteful, and annoying. The police acted like gangsters and kept coming at us for protection money. To make it worse, they clearly weren't talking to each other, so every damn cop that saw us tried the same stump. The worst ones are the ones who didn't take a hint when Mom smiled and tried to make a fight out of it. And to make it worse, they weren't doing their damn jobs either. It's a problem when there are more thieves in a legit empire than there are on a pirate station. To be fair, darling, everyone knows who my babies are, and they know they will answer to me in very short order if they harm you back home. I've still been mugged a few times. Yes, I know, I forced them out of the airlocks personally. Oh, I was wondering why none of them ever tried it twice. That's one way of being overprotective. She was 12 and needed to be locked up to stay in one place, Yzma protests. If I were to disapprove, I would be an enormous hypocrite. Philip replies, Now then, you need to understand that you bringing me in is going to set off a great deal. Vatras Brahmastra is outright hunting me now. I've sent information to Shun, so she will want my head on a spike as well. As will Milena. They know some sort of thing is up, but they'll be expecting it all from Blythe and each other. Not from me. Now, let's go. I have a date with a short Koiran. Oh? Dating another woman right in front of me? However will I survive with the... Yzma begins to tease before Giselle starts pulling her back towards the armored air car they were using. No, it's bad enough when he hits on you. I don't want you to hit on him, Giselle declares, and a laughing Philip and Yzma climb into the vehicle. It takes 5 minutes before Giselle notices that there's no hint of putting so much as a pair of handcuffs on Philip. Blythe smiles to herself as the approved vehicle moves in. This was going to settle everything from the past few days. It had been a scramble to keep things moving, because if they stopped for even a moment after an enemy put their hands on her, then her control over her soldiers would fall apart. She needed to make them see the impertinent bastard prostrated before her, or the respect they had for her would... Why is he not restrained? Blythe demands as the doors open, and her opponent emerges without restraints, without concerns, and looking fresh from a spa. They weren't necessary. Now I'll take my reward now. 50 million credits, the enormous Zedin woman says. Blythe had heard somewhere that certain races never actually stopped growing. They just slowed down as they did it. But wouldn't a healing coma reverse it or something? The Mara is almost lost in things. But her unusually dark eyes do grab attention for a moment as Blythe scans the area for threats. Of course, a Dzedin is nothing but a walking threat. The bastard that kidnapped her has, of course, huge axiom pockets inside his jacket. But the girl? Some small arms? She does not fit in, likely an apprentice or child of the bounty hunter. Why is he not restrained? Blythe demands again. They were not necessary. Now he is here and able to speak, the hunter states. Hello, the infuriating man says. You owe me and my daughter 50 million credits. The hunter insists, and Blythe can feel something. Ma'am, the other Vatras, they are coming! A woman rushing into the room screams out in a panic. What? Blythe demands. Oh, they're early, the man states, and she turns to stare at him. I've caused trouble for more than you after all. They want me. You what? Blew up Ramastra's base, kidnapped one of Shun's toys, and sent him to Milena just to make sure she wasn't forgotten. Jericho boy's been having a bad time with her, so Shun is proper pissed. He then looks directly to several different parts of the hangar. Do you hear that, Vatras? I am here, and I am the source of all your woes. Come and claim me. What are you talking about? Why are you... No, Blythe exclaims as she puts it together and looks at the places. Small spots where the roof meets the wall. Emergency lights on! Now! The lights switching to red, and from a different direction entirely shows the strange bumps in the walls perfectly through their shadows. The base is compromised. The construction company is compromised. The man corrects her, and she turns to stare at him. Who the hell are you? Me. I'm the last enemy anyone wants. Now, unless you want to make one more, one I would hesitate to fight myself, I suggest you pay the lovely lady and her daughter, the man says with a smug grin as he indicates the Dzedan woman. You just revel in chaos, don't you? The Dzedan bounty hunter demands the man. There is a certain joy in seeing everyone else panic as they realize just what you've done, Philip states calmly. Ma'am, we have several entire military forces on approach. They're bringing their best, the communications woman says, getting further news from the insides. You led them here, Blythe says, and I've got everyone in a nice killing mood. It's a long past time that Laveron has a single leader. It's time for a unified vision. The man says, and Blythe feels raw horror work its way down her spine. Who are you working for? She demands. My lady knows I work her will in my most magnificent manner. I have no doubt in my heart or mind that my queen is smiling at me even now. Philip replies, knowing his true and heartfelt words will be beautifully misinterpreted. That's the best part about language he finds. You can lie with the most heartfelt and sincere of truths. For newest England, he says to himself in English and begins to move, knowing that 4 hostile powers are watching him, knowing that his closest allies are likely to back away as they haven't gotten the pay they were promised. He is outnumbered thousands to 1 with this force alone. He is outgunned in the heart of their power and surrounded. He is fighting for queen, for country, and against impossible odds with a crazy plan and allies that barely know him. He's home. Increase speed to just below the sound barrier. We cannot afford to have a sonic boom announce our approach. They know we're coming, but will not have exact coordinates until we arrive, and then we will have a firing solution on them before they have one on us, Milena orders from her command armor. She's seated like a queen on her throne as her tail, normally a massive crushing force, is intertwined around the controls below her. Minute twitches of the muscles along its enormous length allowed her to dance while never once bothering to grab any controls. Of course, she had those kinds of controls, but the important thing about being in charge was showing that you had multiple ways of doing things in a better way than most of your soldiers. One day, her current bodily configuration would be inspiration for Yorgwa the galaxy over. The leader. Yes, that is what it will be called. Today is but one more day she shall show herself wiser than the others, more capable and more cunning. She will steal the prize from Blythe, fend off Brahmastra and Shun and retreat. Then she will interrogate the mammal and find out precisely which of the 3 has brought this force of utter chaos to Laveron. He is too powerful an agent to leave on the field. She has underestimated this mammal and will not make the mistake twice. It revels in and promotes the chaos that hot bloods are prone to. Clever, but not clever enough for Cole Reason to take down. She has sent the two cloaken in with careful teleportation. They are greedy, yes, but greed is easily manipulated. Matching Blythe's bounty on him for each of them will assure that her newest infiltrators will have this chaos bringer in her control in short order. Brahmastra guns her engines as hard as they go. The sound barrier is a memory. She has a long way to go and a lot to do. She's also priming her remaining war station to take a shot at the place. Fucker thought he was so damn slick, did he? He was going to pay with everything he had, and if he survived and wasn't already Shun's toy, he would sell the little bastard to her to keep the yellow idiot quiet. Or even better, on side. It was time for this stupid dance of politics and knives waiting for the back to end. She was going to kill the others like she should have done years ago. This had to end, and in the end, what matters is strength. What matters is violence, and the ability to bring more to the field than anyone else. All the money, pleas, and simpering deals meant nothing when you had a fist-sized hole in your chest. And it was well past time to put holes in people. My Vatras, we have him. Our infiltration of Melena's compound was successful. He's in a bad way. He spent a large part of the day in pitch darkness and has not been fed. Well done. Get him home and cared for. I'm going for my pound of flesh. Not only that kill-crazy monster Brahmastra and the vile Melena, but Blythe has the source of our woes. Keep safe. Shun answers with a growl in her voice. Her pupils are narrowed to sheer slits. She wants death, and death she will have. No doubt Blythe was trying to get her agent back. But so much was going wrong. No, it couldn't be Blythe. He was actively working against her. And, Captain, we're detecting a new force following us. Friendly IFFs, but not part of our group. Keep an eye on them. We need to focus on the enemy ahead. And up your internal dampeners. Go faster. We're going into a mess and can't afford to be distracted. Something was missing. Something was wrong. But, Lady Shun, the burning rage station is reorienting its cannons towards the compound. That's Brahmastra's. Inform the unending fury to aim at the burning rage. If it even looks like it's going to fire at us, they're to blow it to pieces. All 4 stations are reorienting now, ma'am. We don't know what's doing what, and the voice is cut off as massive static starts screaming through the communications. Just like last time, when her station was stolen and she lost another in the ensuing panicked firing. When? It's a trap, Shun realizes. The water is bluer than the sky, bluer than water and unnaturally chemically blue, thick and smelling of metal. Then it explodes upwards as a massive blue-stained yellow station rises out of a frigid mountain lake and climbs into the sky. Targeting systems activate and antennas reach upwards as it starts operating on unusual frequencies and takes stock of the positions of the other war stations and begins to shift. The overwhelming orders cannons prime to fire. Blythe gasps as the response from her data link comes in. The Vatras were firing on each other. They had backup heavy walkers they had gotten here somehow, and the powerful killing machines had opened fire. It was a free-for-all, and she was caught in the middle. The base shakes as the walls begin to crack, and the madman who was throwing grenades, plasma bolts, and precise coils shot everywhere. The bastard was outright dancing around return fire, and the Dizidin and Mera had just vanished. How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? Who was he working for? Who was his queen? There's a massive shake as whatever munition that was just hit the nearby mountain. It was a solid one, but whether it was rail or coil shot didn't matter. That was force enough to make everything lurch, and she was officially done with this. Koiran rarely run on all fours. They can, but almost never do. It's cultural, they're already small by the regards of the galaxy, and going on all fours is just asking for teasing. They're already compared unfavorably to Lopenaz's. There's no cause to make it worse. But she can go on all fours and now does. A coil gun held tight to her side. She's more accurately on all threes as she uses her body to brace the powerful weapon as she charges low, fast, and viciously towards the troublesome man, supersonic coils hot accelerating in front of her to force him into cover as she gets closer and the shots grow ever more deadly and hard to dodge. At this range, she's shooting through his cover and forcing him clear out. You will pay, she screams at him. Ladies first, the man says smoothly as he shifts to the side. His previous weapons were destroyed by her shots, and he doesn't even slow as he lets go of them to draw something small, delicate-looking, and familiar. The chemical launcher. Then she sees the pen. Null slams into her and she stumbles. Her gun powers down and she skids to a stop in front of him. The bottom of his shoe is the last thing she sees.